Did you know that your F-150 Ecoboost engine's pistons could self-destruct? Or did you know that your 10-speed transmission could fail? Well, those two things are nothing compared to the 5 other Ecoboost engine problems that you'll know about by the end of this video. If you already have one or you're thinking of getting one, this video might make you reconsider your options. Or at least, I can show you how to take better care of your truck so you don't end up with the problems that other people have had. Because you don't want to have an experience like this. Issue number 1. On the Gen 1 3.5 liter, that's 2011 to 2016, warping exhaust manifolds are a real problem. The condition is where the weight of the turbo and the lack of an extra stud in the cylinder head to hold the manifold allows the manifolds to warp, creating a little gap between the exhaust manifold and the cylinder head. As you can imagine, that lets a lot of exhaust escape. And what happens is the exhaust is no longer being pushed through the turbo, which causes the compressor wheel to spin, which in turn creates boost, and that's where these trucks get their power from. So as you guys look right here, you can see this big black mark, and that's right there where the exhaust manifold is. And that black mark is the exhaust escaping from behind the manifold. Picture of the same thing. You guys can see that broken off stud there too. And lastly, we have at the top, there's a brand new manifold, and the bottom, there's an old one, and you guys can see the big black mark there. So you will feel a loss of power and like a screeching sound during acceleration, and that screeching sound is the exhaust escaping through that tiny crack. To repair it, you're looking at about $2,000 to $5,000, and there's some cases where it may cost more than that if a stud breaks off in the cylinder head, but for the most part, that price range is pretty accurate. The question is, how do you avoid it? Can you avoid it? Ford has released updated manifolds that are made of a material that is not as prone to warping, but it's never a guarantee. If you want a permanent solution, I highly recommend Full Race's Formline manifolds. I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to go check those out. But that's not the only issue that you could run into. And that brings us into issue number 2. Also on the Gen 1 3.5 liter, the timing chain at higher miles like 90,000 can stretch or wear out, often leading to rattling noises, especially on startup, rough idling, decreased fuel efficiency, and in severe cases, engine misfires, or even catastrophic engine damage if left unaddressed. A timing chain replacement doesn't sound too bad, but on these trucks, it's internal and you have to remove the entire front engine cover to get to it. But with that in mind, the repair usually costs anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000. The best thing to do to prevent this is to keep your oil nice and fresh, and just keep an attentive ear to your engine at cold start and in general. And if you hear that rattling sound, just go get it checked out immediately. Now before I get into the next 3 other issues, last one being the most important and the most expensive to repair, I need you to... What world is that? Oh, look at that. I need you to hit that subscribe button if you want to see more truck content. Issue number 3. The Gen 2 3.5 liter, which is the 2017 to 2020, and they have an issue with problematic cam phasers. The Raptor, though of a slightly different engine construction, still applies in the same instance. The cam phasers on some of these Gen 2 engines start to wear out and they begin to rattle on cold start. On the Gen 2, Ford seemed to have fixed the rattling timing chain problem that they had on the Gen 1, but they picked up a new problem. And if for those of you guys who don't know what the cam phasers are, those are those 4 round disc looking things that hold the timing chain there. If you guys look at the top of this photo, you'll see a hole in the cam phaser. And the problem with leaving the cam phaser issue and not addressing it is that eventually it will self-destruct and it'll throw little metal pieces all throughout your engine, and that could be very detrimental. The cam phaser replacement cost is kind of all over the place. Sometimes a Ford dealership will pay part of the price of the repair and you pay the other part, and that I've seen anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000. However, there is a TSB that should get it done for free by Ford, but for some reason sometimes the dealership won't do it. It's just something you have to work out with your dealership. I'll put a link to that TSB in the description if you guys want it for future reference. Are there any ways to mitigate this issue? Just the same with the timing chain issue on the Gen 1. Keeping your oil nice and fresh is going to be a very helpful thing, but it's not going to fix this problem. It's more of a when it will happen than an if it will happen. Then again, there's plenty of people who have had a 2017 to 2020 3.5 liter and they've never ever had to change the cam phasers. And that brings us to issue number 4. Now I want to take a minute to also look at a couple 2.7 EcoBoost issues. The Gen 1, which spanned 2015 to 2017, didn't have too many problems, but there's a couple that you should know about. Ford learned a lot from the 3.5 liter, and I think they applied a lot of those things that they learned to the 2.7 liter in 2015 when they designed it. First off, there was a handful of 2015 to 2017 2.7 liters that got a bad set of cylinder heads with a faulty valve guide in it, and those were prone to burning oil, misfires, spark knock, and rough idle. This issue is also fixable with a TSB for that specific problem. I did it on my 2016 2.7 liter a couple years ago, and I didn't have to pay a dime for it. There's really no preventative option for that, because if you have one of the trucks with a bad valve guide, it's gonna go bad and there's really nothing you can do. You just have to replace it. Now the Gen 2 2.7 liter from 2018 to 2020 really didn't have any major issues worth mentioning, but the Gen 3 2.7 liter had some issues right out of the gate. The intake valves were made of a bad batch of materials, causing many of them to snap in half, and Ford recalled a bunch of vehicles affecting 2021 to 2022 2.7 liter engines in the F-150, Bronco, Edge, Explorer, Lincoln Nautilus, and Aviator. The fix for this issue is easy and it is free of cost. Since it is a recall, you just have to go in and get it done. I'll put a link to the recall reference number in the description down below. And finally, we get to issue number 5. Many people don't give their truck the attention that it deserves, and that can lead to turbo failure, valve train failure, mechanical failure, and even engine failure. These repairs are costly, somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000. For some older trucks, that's as much as the truck is worth itself. And while some of the issues we've talked about you can't avoid, lack of maintenance is something that you can avoid. Do your maintenance and do it before Ford requires it. If your manual says you can go 7,500 miles between oil changes, go 5,000. Maybe go 3,000. Especially if you're towing a lot and you're working your engine really hard, I would suggest changing your oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. If the manual says the transmission fluid doesn't need to be changed until 120,000 miles, change it at 60,000. But maybe you have a hard time keeping track or remembering what you've done, or what you need to do on your truck, and that's where you can grab your notes on your phone and you can make a detailed logbook of all the things you've done to your truck and all the things you need to do to it. So after hearing all of these issues that you guys have heard me talk about, I do want to follow up and say these engines don't really have any problems. But in all seriousness, they don't really have that many problems. The Ecoboost engines are products of some of the most amazing engineering Ford has ever came out with. Many of you may not know this, but the Gen 3 3.5 liter Ecoboost got a lot of improvements, including an all-new engine block and cylinder heads. With ML3Z phasers, metal timing chain guides, and valve train from the Coyote, new timing chain tensioners, and a whole new 250 bar 3675 PSI direct injection fuel system. Ford also upgraded the piston to a much stronger one, and the Gen 3 has the strongest piston crank assembly to date. Although the Gen 3 does continue to use the Gen 2 connecting rods. So just thought I'd throw that little bit of information out there for you guys. Thought it was kind of cool when I learned about it. But take care of your truck or any Ecoboost powered vehicle that you have, and stay tuned for more content. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later. Real quick, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you go check out some of my other videos. Links to those will be on this end screen right after this.